It was a visit that the entire world had its eyes on. Donald Trump has now spent about more than 30 hours as a part of the India visit. Today was all about business. The American president began his day at the Rajghat, accompanied by the First Lady. Donald Trump paid his respects to Mahatma Gandhi, signing the visitor's book. Donald Trump wrote, "The American people stand strongly with a sovereign and wonderful India, the vision of the great Mahatma Gandhi. This is a tremendous honor." That was his message. Donald Trump then made his way to the Rashtrapati Bhavan, where the American president was accorded a ceremonial welcome. Later, Prime Minister Modi and President Trump sat down for talks. According to India, the talks covered 5 broad categories: security, defense, energy, technology, and people-to-people contact. Prime Minister Modi announced the beginning of talks on a big trade deal, Pakistan, as well as the issue of H-1B visas. All of that was a part of the statements. After the talks, the American president met with the Indian business leaders at the American embassy. He took questions from the likes of Kumar Mangalam Birla and Mukesh Ambani. Later in the evening, the Trumps attended a state banquet hosted by President Ramnath Kovind. Those were the big events of the day. But one event out of all of them in particular made a lot of noise. And that brings us to our next story. The story of an evening press conference by the US president. You have to trust him to not disappoint when it comes to answering tough questions. In an almost 40-minute long news briefing, Donald Trump touched upon a host of issues critical to both the US and India. We now get you the key takeaways and highlights. We decode them one by one, starting with the most potent subject in India right now, the Citizenship Amendment Act. The president was dragged into that issue as many as 4 times during the entire press conference. One question after another indirectly required him to make his stance clear. And each time, his answer reiterated what the Indian government has been saying for the longest time, that it is an internal issue. Listen in.
We did talk about religious freedom, and I will say that the Prime Minister was incredible on what he told me. He wants people to have religious freedom, and very strongly. And he said that in India they have worked very hard to have great and open religious freedom. And if you look back and look at what's going on relative to other places especially, but they have really worked hard on religious freedom. I asked that question in front of a very large group of people today, and he talked about it. We talked about it for a long time, and I really believe that's what he wants. As far as the individual attack, I heard about it, but I didn't discuss that with him. That's up to India. I don't want to discuss that. I want to leave that to India, and hopefully they're going to make the right decision for the people. That's really up to India.
And then came Kashmir. How could it not be brought up? The president went on to acknowledge the fact that the issue needs to be resolved bilaterally and that India and Pakistan are working on it. This is what he said.
India is, it's a brave nation too. There's no pullback from India. And we just hope, and I said I'll help, I'll do whatever I have to do if I can do that, because my relationship with both gentlemen is so good. But there has been difficulty in Pakistan, and we're seeing what we can do about it. Anything I can do to mediate, anything I can do to help, I would do. They're working on Kashmir. Kashmir has been a thorn in a lot of people's sides for a long time. And there are 2 sides to every story, but they've been working on that very hard. We discussed it at great length, terrorism, and I think we have some very good ideas.
And there were also questions on the fight against terror and obviously Pakistan. While the US president reiterated the need to tackle the menace, there was a balancing act when it comes to Pakistan. The president spoke about his quote-unquote good relationship with Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan. And in a rather diplomatic response, he said there are 2 sides to every story.
2 sides to every story, but they've been working on that very hard. We discussed it at great length, terrorism. We talked a lot about Pakistan. I have a very good relationship with Prime Minister Khan, very good. We talked about it today at length, actually, and Prime Minister Modi. And it's no question it's a problem, but it's a problem they're working on it. India is You know, it's a brave nation, too. There's no pullback from India.
And it wasn't long before the elephant in the room was addressed. Tariffs. Trump, being the master deal maker that he is, he said yesterday that he's holding out for a bigger, better and a fantastic deal. But today, the American president did not mince words. He stood his ground on tariffs, saying that India is probably the highest tariff nation in the world. Those were his words. No surprise there, given that he's earlier described India as the king of tariffs. In particular, he complained about the heavy import duty on Harley-Davidson motorcycles.
India is probably the highest tariff nation in the world, meaning charging tariffs to outsiders. And I said, we have to stop that. We have to stop it, at least as it pertains to the United States. And I think we're understanding each other. Harley-Davidson has to pay tremendous tariffs when they send motorcycles in here. When India sends motorcycles into the U.S., there's virtually no tariff. For the most part, there is absolutely no tariff. So I just said that's unfair, and we're working it out. We're working it out.
And now to the issue of H-1B visas. The president's reply was rather vague. He said the issue was everybody's to solve, and then went on to talk about the affection of the Indian diaspora towards him. He may have left a lot unanswered.
Yeah, we're talking about the H-1Bs, and we are, look, the relationship we have, this is not from me, this is from almost everybody that saw it. They say in the history of India, which has a long history and a brilliant history in so many different ways, there's never been a reception given to somebody like was given, and I would like to say for the United States of America, but nobody else that came here got the kind of reception we got. We gave, it was 125,000, I think, seats they had yesterday. They were full. You had thousands and thousands of people outside. Prime Minister Modi was telling me thousands of people outside. That's not uncommon for me, to be honest with you, but when I look at 125,000 seats, and that was an incredible scene yesterday.